in Hebraic understanding, 13 is one of the most significant and most wonderful numbers because 13 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word ahava, which is love. So love equals 13 in Hebrew. And think about it for a moment. 1 Corinthians, the chapter of love is chapter 13. And there's 13 verses in that chapter. So Paul is emphasizing love, love, love.
Hey, Rabbi, today we are going to be discussing a topic that I know you've thought extensively about. Actually, I like to say this is Rabbi's bread and butter topic. All right, you've taught on this, you've written on this. Of course, I'm talking about the significance of Hebrew letters and numbers. So for our conversation today, I want to get started with a real basic question, then we're going to dig deeper as always. Why is it important for followers of Jesus to grow in an understanding of Hebrew?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Rabbi Ryan.
Thanks.
For example, 2/3 of the Bible is written in Hebrew.
Yeah.
So, the majority of the Bible is written in Hebrew. And even the New Testament, which we had come down to us in Greek, was still written from a Jewish, Hebraic mindset. Right. So it's still there. And I just think there's a lot of deeper insights in meaning that if you don't understand Hebrew letters and numbers, you're going to miss the depth of that revelation that we can receive when we understand it.
So, that's 2/3 of the Bible. That's
Absolutely.
That's a lot. And I think that what you just said is really important. It is, of course, it's well known that the New Testament came to us in Greek. But the writers of the New Testament, they were primarily Jews, and they thought like Jews, and Hebrew was, we're not exactly sure how widely Hebrew was used during the first century, but we know it was read in the synagogues and so forth. And so it's pretty understanding to have a working knowledge a little bit of Hebrew.
Yeah,
right?
they would have had, we'll get more into this, but they would have understood Hebrew, and they would have studied the scriptures in Hebrew, and they would have prayed in Hebrew. So, they weren't studying the scriptures in Greek, that's for sure. So their knowledge of the scriptures would have come from the Hebrew text. And so that's really important when you're trying to make the connections between the old and the new, because when you understand the Hebrew, that's why I like to read the New Testament even in Hebrew. It helps to bring these kind of, that connects back to this, and you see it come together.
And of course, we're not saying that everyone needs to become a Hebrew scholar.
Absolutely
or be
not.
able to go to Israel and carry on a conversation in Hebrew, on Ben Yehuda Street. No. We're not saying that, but we're just saying that it's good to have a basic understanding. We're going to talk about what some of those things are. So let's get practical. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say
No. I think to be able to understand that it's significant.
It's significant.
And to orientate ourselves to saying, hey, when we learn, we want to take these things into consideration, and we want to learn with those things in mind.
Right. And like, even despite the majesty of some of the translations, like the King James, the Bible did not come to us in King James English, and so forth. So it's good for us to have this conversation. All right, let's get practical. I want to look at an example of the significance of a Hebrew letter. So what's the importance of the first Hebrew letter of the alphabet? So that's the letter Aleph. What does this letter represent? So just get our juices flowing a little bit about just the first letter in Hebrew.
Yeah, the letter Aleph is a very significant letter. It has a numerical value of 1, which is also important, as we'll see, because most of the divine names of God begin with the letter Aleph. Adonai, Elohim, El, those names all begin with the letter Aleph, and Aleph can literally be translated as chief or leader. So it's the letter that represents God because he's the chief, and God is one. In the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And even the word one, echad in Hebrew, begins with the letter Aleph, right? And then God makes us in his image and likeness, and the first man is called Adam. And Adam's name begins with, guess what? The letter Aleph. And then the next 2 letters of Adam's name is the Dam, the Dalet Mem. And so literally you can break Adam's name into 2 parts. The Aleph is the image of God, the spiritual part of man, the first letter. And then the two next letters, the Dam in Hebrew literally means blood. So within the name of man himself, you have the spiritual part and you have the material, fleshly part symbolized by blood. The life is in the blood, for example. And so we see that connection there. And then what's also interesting is that in Hebrew, there's one letter difference between the word exile and redemption. The word for redemption is geula, and the word for exile is gola. One letter difference. Guess which letter?
I'm going to guess it's Aleph.
That's right.
Let's go. All right.
Because when you take God out,
Yeah.
what are you left with? Exile. And when you put the Aleph, which represents God's name, back in, what do you have? Redemption.
Yeah.
And Yeshua, Jesus, is the Aleph and the Tav, the first and the last, the beginning and the end.
So I want to ask you something a little bit edgy. You've taught a lot on this topic, thought a lot on this topic, and I'm sure you've observed a lot of confusion about the significance of numbers in the Bible. Some say we can make too much of numbers in the Bible. Others just say there's nothing to it, and they ignore the significance. I think some people maybe even are a little bit afraid to go into this territory. So share your thoughts on this a little bit. Does God speak to us through numbers in the Bible? And where does the confusion come in?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think you're right in what you have said. Obviously, God speaks through numbers. We have key numbers in the Bible, like why 6 stone pots, why 153 fish, why is the mark of the beast 666. So clearly there are numbers in the Bible that are significant. But I think there's something deeper, there's more, and that is that we live in a mathematical universe. And it's important for us to be able to understand that, again, there are no Roman numerals in the Bible. The way that you write numbers in Hebrew is with letters. So if I say open up to the first chapter of your Bible, I'll say open up to chapter Aleph, Perek Aleph, right? And so that's significant because in the very beginning, when God creates the heavens and the earth, maybe someone who's more academically minded would say, well, that's obviously just myth. We live in a mathematical universe. But if you understand letters and numbers are interchangeable, the letters form the spiritual part of creation. All things are held together by his words. And the numbers that are behind the letters form the mathematical code of creation. And so when God speaks the world into existence, he's creating the spiritual code as well as the mathematical code that undergirds all of creation. And so if we live in a mathematical world and God's word is the blueprint for creation, it makes sense that letters and numbers are connected and that both should matter and have significance to us. But I do want to say that I think there is deeper meaning in things, and we've talked about and we'll talk about more. I do want to say this, though. I don't think you should ever make a doctrine or some sort of interpretation that cannot be found in the plain meaning of the scriptures. So what the letters and numbers do is they help highlight the truths and bring it to a deeper level or give a unique perspective on how it comes together. So I do think there's a caveat. I think sometimes people read too much into the numbers in the sense of making doctrines or beliefs or things along those lines. So we do have to be careful.
No, that's good. So you use it, it will highlight, it will bring out, it will add to, but don't make a fundamental point based on, the numbers. I think that's really powerful and important. And I really want to, emphasize again, I know I already put in a plug for the letters and numbers series in the teaching library, but that's going to take this much deeper. And one of the things I appreciate about that is that, sometimes when we talk about Hebrew letters and numbers, it can get a little dizzying because it's a deep topic. But I appreciate how in that series and even in our conversation here, it's important to keep, what does this mean? How does this help me to have an appreciation for who God is? What is his word all about? And how is this going to make a difference in how I walk this out? What's something that we can learn about just the heart of God in how he utilizes Hebrew letters and numbers. Like, what does this mean practically about God?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One of the numbers that I love is the number 13. Okay. And for many in the West, that's an unlucky number. Yeah. And I'm Jason, so on Friday the 13th, I was well aware of the day. People would stay away from me. But look, a lot of hotels don't have the 13th floor.
You bring up bad memories from those scary movies.
Traumatic, right? Traumatic, right?
Yeah.
But actually, in Hebraic understanding, 13 is one of the most significant and most wonderful numbers because 13 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word ahava, which is love. So love equals 13 in Hebrew. And think about it for a moment. 1 Corinthians, the chapter of love is chapter 13. And there's 13 verses in that chapter. So Paul is emphasizing love, 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 okay? But the word echad, to be one, also has a numerical value of 13 because what love is about becoming one with God and becoming one in relationship with the greater body of Messiah. So Yeshua gives these two great love commandments, to love the Lord your God, to love your neighbors. Well, love, 13 times 2 is 26. Why is that important? Because 26 is the numerical value of the divine name, Yud, He, Vav, He, the tetragrammatron. So how do we fully embody who God is and make him known in the world? It's through loving him and through loving our neighbors. And when those two loves come together, there's the full revelation and the full manifestation of who that is. And Yeshua says, the world will know us by our love for one another.